the original sin. Adam and Eve eat a piece of fruit, and we say that's the reason for all the suffering in the world. Symbolically, this is true, but if you can't understand the meaning of the symbolism, you don't truly know the story. Because this story isn't about fruit, and the only sin being committed is against yourself. Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge is the single biggest betrayal we make towards ourselves, and I can assure you that you and everyone you know is doing it every day. By the end of this video, you will understand the deep wisdom of the story, why it's been passed down through generations, and how this new knowledge will transform your life. As a preface to this discussion, a note on what God truly is, at least in one aspect. As since God is all-powerful and infinite and knowing, there is infinite ways to describe the concept of God. In the first book of Kings, Elijah speaks with God, and God is described as a still, small voice. And after my studying of all the stories of the Old Testament, it seems this is an accurate description, because God is the guiding light, the angel on your shoulder, your intuition on what is the right course of action. In modern times, we call it the conscience. It is hard to truly still your mind so that you only hear your conscience alone. Your mind is constantly flooded with thoughts that are truly irrelevant to you, many of them persuading you to serve your vices, indulge in luxuries. Your brain is also being bombarded with a flurry of hormones trying to dictate what your next move will be. The conscience, however, sits at the very top of everything else. It looks down at the metaphysical space below it. Your emotions, selfish desires, and immoral temptations. And since it is the most senior authority, it can supersede all other drivers of decision making. The conscience makes decisions based on what is best for you and your future self and your future community. It is not simply a mechanism to dictate morally good behaviour on a surface level. This describes things like how stealing is always bad, breaking one of the commandments, even if it is someone poor or for children. Opening yourself up to the avenue of theft being circumstantially permissible so that you can get by means you will never think of a long-term plan for your survival. If you strictly abide by the rule of never stealing, it will never be an option. You will always be better prepared and find a better option, as you will not resort to the theft of other people's property under any circumstance. The conscience acts like a voice in your head in that it does talk to you, not with words, but with very persuasive guidance you can feel within yourself when you find it. When you ignore this voice, you're sort of hiding from it. Think about every time you had to do something important, a deadline to meet, going to the gym, even just getting out of bed, and you constantly put it off. I know just as well as you, there was a niggling voice in the back of your head, telling you what you should be doing. By continuing to put these important tasks off in service of yourself in the here and now, you are ignoring the conscience. When you are unified with that conscience, or in other words, when you are unified with God, you are on the right path to an abundant and happy life for you and those around you. That is not to be confused with an easy life, but more on that later. In the beginning, Adam and Eve are completely unified with the voice of God. The text tells us they were naked and felt no shame. This is telling us they had nothing to hide. They were completely confident in what they were doing, in the image of themselves, because they were acting out their highest self by listening to their conscience. Once you are able to follow your conscience truly well, and do what your highest self believes to be right and proper, you would have a similar self-esteem. You would have nothing to hide and no excuses to make. That is what Eden is. It's not a garden. It's a state of being when you are one with your conscience. The arrival of the serpent into the story adds further colour to the internal state we're exploring here. The serpent deceives Eve by concealing the truth, not lying to her, but by not clearly explaining the outcome of what her actions will be. The serpent says to Eve that if she eats the fruit from the tree, she will gain the knowledge of good and evil. She will become like God. She will know why morals exist, why something is good versus being bad. The deception here is that Eve will gain this knowledge, but not cognitively, instead experientially. Eve will know evil, as evil will enter the world as a consequence of her action to eat the fruit. This is because she has betrayed God, the conscience, Instead of relying on the higher self of the conscience to decide what is morally good, she has deferred the responsibility to rational thinking. The issue is that rational thinking is not superior to the highest authority of the conscience. Rationality is constrained by the cognitive ability of humans. We cannot see all outcomes, all downstream effects, so what seems like rationally a moral good decision in the here and now might have terrible consequences down the line, even if that is as far away as 1 or 2 generations from now. The way Eve looks at the fruit tells us more. Eve looks at the fruit. She sees it as good for eating, pleasant to the eye, and desirable. If the serpent is the conflicting voice trying to convince you to serve the present moment, its running mate is temptation. Temptation can be anything. The desire to be lazy and stay in bed, the lust for someone other than your partner, the vice that may grip you when you're presented with an opportunity for great financial gain, but it comes at the expense of other innocent people. Temptation has a wide range of faces, and it can be affecting your personal self, your relationships, as well as other people. Temptation is also deceptive like the serpent. It deceives you into thinking the short-term option is the right one, that it will make you feel the most satisfied, when in reality it is actually destroying your future. This is all tied together by temptation, the betrayal of the conscience that is rationalised, as it feels like the right and smart decision for the current moment. Maybe that's true, but at what catastrophic cost to your future self? So far we can see in the story, God is the character that depicts the conscience that is trying to guide you on the right path, whereas the serpent is temptation and your lower self trying to dictate what your decisions will be. And this makes sense because this is the original sin, and this title is not a throwaway line, it is also symbolically significant. It is called original, not because it happened first chronologically. It is called original because it is the first sin you must overcome within yourself. The moment you choose what serves you right now over what serves your future self and your people, you have taken a bite from the forbidden fruit. Something shifts when that happens. You stop being guided by the divine voice and start being guided by something else entirely, the self. You become self-conscious. Instead of following the guidance of God, you are driven by your lower desires rather than your destiny. Because you do not have truly divine intentions, you need to hide things from others, make excuses about your imperfections, because you care about what others think of you. Before you turned your back on God, you only cared about what the acceptance of the divine voice was telling you. As long as you were the one with that voice, you felt supremely confident in your actions. But now, your acceptance needs to come from somewhere else. Adam and Eve become self-conscious, as the story goes, after eating the fruit. They scramble to cover themselves, using fig leaves as clothes. They are not literally hiding their bodies. They are hiding from their own conscience. The God they have betrayed. When you're no longer aligned with your inner voice, you cannot bear to face it. So you look away, you stay busy, and you distract yourself. After this, God confronts Adam. This is the moment that reveals everything about what self-consciousness actually does to a person. Adam doesn't take responsibility. He blames Eve, as she suggested they ate the fruit. And he even blames God, as in the story, the character of God gave Eve to Adam, and blames him as being the source of the problem. Eve then blames the serpent once the frame is shifted to her. Nobody is owning up to it. This is not ancient human weakness. This is the most modern thing in the entire story. When you become self-conscious, the ego becomes the thing you are protecting. Accountability feels like attack on you as a person. Admitting fault is retreating from the battle rather than making things right. So you redirect, you find the circumstance, the person, the system that made you do what you did, ignoring your own free will to choose. What does this actually cost you as an individual? After all, if you can always successfully dodge blame and responsibility, why does this matter? The issue is, the moment you stop taking responsibility, you give away any personal agency over your experience. If your circumstances are to blame, then only circumstances can save you. If you are being held back by other people, then only those people can change your fate. You become a passenger in your own life, taking full responsibility for everything, and following your conscience as the guiding light for what your actions you need to take is only framework that forces you to think ahead, plan carefully, and face your failures as information rather than catastrophes. Next in the story, Adam and Eve are exiled from Eden by God. Most people read this as a punishment, and I think that's wrong, because what would it mean to stay in Eden in a fallen state? To remain in paradise while hiding from your conscience permanently? To have access to everything while being unable to face yourself? You will never be able to fulfill your true potential, see what you are capable of, and you will never see the euphoric experience of overcoming a seemingly insurmountable obstacle in your life. The exile is a gift. Outside of Eden, Adam and Eve now face adversity, they face consequence, and the full weight of the world. And in doing so, they are given something they can never have found inside the garden, the opportunity to achieve autonomy away from the coddling of paradise. This is the spiritual journey of building something within yourself, gathering resources within yourself, rather than building a materialistic life outwardly. And this is much more fulfilling. How many celebrities have you heard about suffering from depression? They have all the status, all the resources, and yet they find themselves running into all sorts of spiritual issues. This is because, despite their materialistic success, which is very impressive to say the least, they have not ventured through the spiritual realm and built up their resources there. This is reflected in the garden, a material paradise, and then the exile is what you face when you realise all the money and status in the world alone can't make you happy. You need to focus on both material and spiritual success, rather than just one. Heavenly life is not a comfortable life. It is not a hedonistic life. It is the life where you walk with your conscience as your guide, face your real fears instead of hiding from them, and become, through that process, something greater than you were. The spiritual journey can be just as hard as the materialistic one. When you develop your spiritual path by facing the hardship you are avoiding, you become the hero of your own story, not in spite of whatever harsh circumstances befall you. It is those hardships that set in motion your spiritual journey. I fully believe that hardships can be a gift. I do of course have every sympathy for anyone going through hard times, but they are an opportunity for you to develop yourself in the spiritual world, something many people ignore in modern life. The focus is all material, which is important, but the spiritual world is just as expansive and has just as much opportunity to achieve abundance as the material world. But to do this, you need to face the difficult times in life with full responsibility and being one with your conscience when you're navigating those situations. As Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Eden is not lost. It is the treasure waiting to be recovered within that cave. The question is, are you willing to stop hiding, stop blaming, and walk back toward the voice you already know is telling the truth? Because it always has been.